Hello and welcome to another episode from Backlot 605. This is another box office bonus episode. I
Yep.
should maybe change the name of this thing so I can actually enunciate words. But
This keeps you on your toes. It gets you off to a good start for the show ahead. So,
as I stumble all the way through it. So this week here, as we've kind of finished up what is 2021 and finally getting into seeing what is 2022. Um, Derek decided to hear this week we're going to talk about what are we going to be looking forward to. What is going to be the things that we're probably going to be talking about this year, right, Derek?
pretty much, 2021 was an interesting rebuilding year of the box office, as we talked about last week. 2022 is certainly going to continue that trend as we get back to more of like a consistent, you know, through the year schedule of movies and kind of just see how, we kind of get our regular dose of big blockbusters again instead of having things bunched up until the end of the year like it was
Hmm.
in 2021. We're also still kind of getting through the last gasp of movies that have been delayed since COVID started. So it'll be nice to kind of get those out there finally, as well as kind of contend with what you know the other upcoming blockbusters are going to be. So it's going to make for an interesting year, with some very special wild cards in the mix. So
Hmm.
it'll be fun to kind of look and see what we're heading toward.
Yeah, the one thing I would certainly say as we go into this here is the first thing is obviously no dates are final.
Nope.
Um, and so pretty much I would have to say is pretty much unless it's coming out next week kind of thing. Put an asterisk to everything. But what I also think will be kind of interesting is once we get to the end of the year, is looking back at this episode and seeing how many dates actually stick.
Yep. I mean, I don't expect that 2022 will have as much upheaval as even 2021. But, obviously last week with Morbius and Turning Red, we had two very big moves.
Hmm.
So there certainly could be more that happens. Hopefully, there is some sense of stability, as we start working through this year's movie lineup. But again, we've been kind of tracking this ever since COVID started and things have been upheaved. So, fingers crossed that a lot of this just sticks for
Yeah.
sanity's sake.
Right. Yeah. One of the first ones I will say is because you made mention of like Turning Red and Morbius getting pushed back and whatnot. One of the ones that won't even be on this list that was supposed to be originally released in 2020 is John Wick 4 because that got
Yes,
pushed all the way to 2023. So
that is correct.
because
Um,
I always think about is the fact I don't remember it was May. Yeah, it was May
yep,
2020, right? Because it was
yep.
supposed to be Matrix 4 versus John Wick 4, and it was Keanu versus Keanu. So it's kind of it's making my brain hurt to think that that movie has literally been delayed for 3 years.
Well, we should take that back a little bit because that date that you were talking about was like
Hmm.
actually like 2021, if I recall, when it was going to be that. And then
Oh,
Matrix 4 was shooting when COVID started. So COVID interrupted them for several months, but John
oh,
Wick had not
that's
even
right.
started production.
That's right.
And
So it
one of
was
the rumors with
2021.
John Wick 4 is there's a section of the movie in Japan that they have yet to shoot because they've not been able to make it out to Japan yet to finish that, which is why there is a 10-month delay on the movie. So there is that. The rest of the movie is at least in the can, but obviously because these John Wick movies are now globe-trotting affairs, you kind of have to get to where you need to get to do that stuff. So
Yeah, you
stay
you do
tuned.
s- you do see that you do say that. However, I have seen behind the scenes of the whole motorcycle chase scene from John
Yep.
Wick 3, and it is all green screen.
Well,
A lot of it was green screen, I should say. So I mean, they could make it work.
they could, but you want that tactility in your John Wick action sequences. You want them to do
True.
that stuff for real. So,
This is true. This is true. All right. So going into what is going to be 2022 with an asterisk. We are going to start with the biggest things that basically hit the box office, in the last few years is Marvel movies. Now you've got this separated into the two sections: Marvel Studios, i.e., Disney, and then the Sony ones, which is basically the Spider-Man. characters universe of which they currently own the rights to.
Yep. So with Marvel, again, last year we frequently remarked upon how we had 4 Marvel Studios movies in the span of less than 6 months with Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, and Spider-Man No Way Home. This is a much more standard 3 movie lineup that we get from Marvel Studios. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this escalates. We're starting with on May 6th in the typical first weekend of May with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness,
Hmm.
which obviously had its trailer play at the very end of Spider-Man No Way Home. We got Benedict Cumberbatch. We got Elizabeth Olsen building upon the events of WandaVision. And we've got Sam Raimi in the director's chair for his first comic book movie in 15 years. Um, Certainly some potential there. There's certainly been some rumblings that, they did some reshoots at the end of last year to kind of hype up more of the multiverse events. They did like 6 weeks of reshoots. Certainly some potential to see, obviously given the events of Spider-Man No Way Home and what Doctor Strange had to do with unleashing that. There's certainly some potential for bleed over excitement into this.
Hmm.
Um, but also I kind of see it as kind of like, you know, Doctor Strange will do well, but I think, Thor Love and Thunder will probably do better because,
Yeah.
now that they kind of figured out with Thor Ragnarok how to make a Thor movie work, that'll be very exciting. Because again, Taika Waititi is back for this installment. Natalie Portman is back and fully
Right.
engaged in this movie. So that's very exciting. Plus, you've got Christian Bale in a villain role. So that'll be fun to see him kind of play in the Marvel sandbox instead of DC for once. So we'll see how that goes. That is slated for July 8th, right after the 4th of July. And then probably, depending upon how this plays out, this could probably be the biggest movie from Marvel Studios this year, which is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, coming out
Yep.
November 11th. Obviously, as we talked about before, the first Black Panther, a huge seismic game-changing hit at the box office. It made $700 million here. Certainly a movie that everybody universally adored, got a Best Picture Oscar nomination out of the deal, and several Oscars like Best Costume, Best Score. Um, Certainly, expectations are very high for Black Panther. I'm very curious. I think, but probably the biggest thing is, I think everybody's just curious about what is Black Panther 2 going to be when you don't have Chadwick Boseman back?
Right.
And how do you shape that story? Who actually succeeds as Black Panther? I certainly don't envy Ryan Coogler for, the position that, he's been put in to try and put together a sequel for this movie. It certainly has had a little bit of a rocky road to filming. They aren't finished filming it yet because Letitia Wright got injured
Yep.
very early on in the shoot, and they're going to start filming this month again. They basically have filmed everything except her scenes because she's a very big component of the sequel. So hopefully things can keep chugging along to actually get this movie out this year. I would not be surprised if things fall through with this movie, maybe they move another Marvel movie up into that slot because I know the Marvels has been chugging along with filming. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, also I believe is completely in the can at this point, for at least from a
Okay.
filming perspective. So to your point about if we see a schedule shuffle, it probably will happen with Black Panther, but we'll just see how it comes together.
Yeah. I guess I am kind of intrigued to see how that all plays out because I did hear that the Letitia Wright, with her injury, it kind of pumped the brakes on big time for that respect.
Yep.
But I mean with the turnaround that we got with like Shang-Chi and Eternals during COVID and whatnot, I think that at least there are just different things that have happened and whatnot that they were be able these hurdles they were able to overcome that maybe that this will be something that hopefully that the injury wasn't enough that it caused so much of a delay that they still won't be able to meet that release date.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's still 10 months out, so
Yeah,
good things could happen. In Ryan Coogler we trust. So
exactly. Exactly. And then so once we get out of the Marvel Studios, out of the Disney sandbox, we move into the Sony one, which I would say I would call it Marvel Studios adjacent because clearly Sony's doing everything they can to be able to make this tie in as much as they possibly can into the
Yep.
MCU without actually tying it into the MCU. Just because I mean, clearly, I mean, obviously, what we've seen from the trailers, which is one of the reasons why sometimes I don't want to watch the trailers. Like we already know that Toombs, aka Vulture, Michael Keaton from the MCU, is showing up in Morbius. So I
Yep.
mean, it's
Although
clearly has
that's probably just a one scene cameo at best, and we've seen most of the cameo in the trailer already. That's my guess. But to your point again, yeah, Sony is trying to thread that needle of, well, we're technically not an MCU movie, but we also kind of are, and we're just going to keep treading that line. So
yeah. Yeah, which I mean, if Sony kind of played that line, and this would even kind of goes into with the next one here, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 is, I think, if Sony plays nice and plays nice with Marvel Studios and says, "Okay, hey, you know what? We've on both sides of the studios we've talked about that the multiverse exists or whatever, is that the Marvel Studios has their version of of their timeline
yep,
and Sony's got theirs and whatnot. So, and
yep,
who knows? So maybe that those kind of things will be able to intertwine later on down the road. I am also granted. I'm looking forward to Morbius just simply because people love to hate on Jared Leto. For
yep,
some
yep.
for some reason, this just seems to be working for me. Uh, so I don't know why. So I guess we'll see if I am either severely disappointed or whatnot. And I didn't get a chance to see Into the Spider Verse in the theater. That was wrong on my part. Once I got to watch it at home, I realized exactly what I missed.
Yep.
So come October, I'm not making that mistake again. Because Lord and Miller definitely know what they're doing when it comes to these animated Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, had great word of mouth and audience reaction. You know, despite opening up in a very competitive Christmas season, it kind of carved out its own aspect, obviously, and it kind of grew on from there. Obviously, it went on to win the Oscar for Best Animated Feature, which is still a delight.
Hmm.
So, and of course, when they did that reveal with that teaser trailer and announcing, oh, by the way, it's not just one sequel you're getting, it's two. I was
Hmm.
like, yep, I am absolutely on board for this. So I think this has a very good potential to break out much bigger than Into the Spider Verse,
Hmm.
which I think would be great because that's exactly what that particular sub franchise deserves. So
Oh, I agree. If there's one thing that certain some other movies have done in the past that I think that if studios are willing to take that gamble, is making a longer movie, breaking it up in two separate parts or whatever the case is. Like I think of, kind of sort of in the aspect of like Kill Bill.
sure,
There are other movies, like the two Matrix sequels were
yeah,
within like 6 months. If you take, like say something like Across the Spider-Verse and says, you know what, to tell our story, it's going to cost us 3.5 to 4 hours. Let's break it up into and release them 6 months apart from each other.
I mean, you also have to kind of keep in mind. I mean, Infinity War and Endgame were basically made back to back as well.
Right.
That was very clear. I mean, who knows how many people actually knew going into Infinity War that, yeah, I mean, you're getting two Avengers movies a year apart, but they're basically part of one master story. And
Yeah.
we will use 5.5 hours across two movies to tell that story. And
Right.
we ate it up. So,
Yeah. I know. I wish more studios would take that gamble because and that's why I hope that we get the part two a lot sooner than a year or 2 years down the road or whatever. Has Sony given us any clue as to what their expectation is for part two?
I haven't seen a date, but they have actually been working on both movies simultaneously, is what I've
Good.
read. So
Good.
I
Which
would
is what they
expect,
should be doing.
6 to 8. I would expect within like 6 to 8 months. That would be my hope. Certainly not a
Good.
whole year between sequels. So
I hope not. I hope not. All right. So out of the Marvel universe and into the DC universe. As like you and I, or at least what I had said before, is people like to give crap about, how many Marvel movies can you dump in one year and whatnot. And then we've got DC doing the same thing. Granted, we have a little bit of a mix up here because one of them is an animated
Yep.
uh release. So, which is probably I for the sake of like this kind of DC movies, I mean, we don't get animated ones very what let Teen Titans Go to the Movies was what the last one.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously with DC, most of their animated stuff is in the direct-to-video realm, which has been very lucrative and very successful for them. But obviously, those have kind of been made with smaller budgets, and not as star-studded cast as what you can get for League of Super Pets here, which is like Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart's doing The Secret Life of Pets, but in the DC universe, which
Right.
basically that's what it is. So,
It
um,
it still kind of I I mean I am curious how the Super Pets is gonna do just because it is an animated movie. The kids are gonna want to go to it and whatnot, but at the same time too, I part of me is like, why?
yeah, I mean, I can understand why DC want to like branch out and at least try something like this. You
Yeah.
know, I know they're also going to bank on the. Well, we also have Keanu in here, so that's going to get a bunch of you out to the theater just for that. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But of course, before that, we've got probably what's going to be their biggest movie of the year, full stop, which is The Batman on March 4th, finally coming out after all its COVID production delays and stuff like that. You know, obviously, when it comes to DC movies, Batman movies rise above everything else. So
Right.
just seeing like what's Robert Pattinson going to do in the role? What's Zoe Kravitz going to do as Catwoman, or Paul Dano as the Riddler, or Colin Farrell unrecognizable as the Penguin? There's a lot of curiosity behind it, and of course, you've got Matt Reeves of the Apes movies stepping behind the camera for this, so there's going to
Hmm.
be a lot of craft and skill into this rendition of the Batman. So certainly will probably be the most exciting thing on the slate, probably of all this stuff. But we'll see how it plays out with audiences.
One of the things that I read that has really I mean, number one, I was gonna go see this just because the idea of Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne slash Batman has got me probably more intrigued than when they had originally announced Heath Ledger as the Joker, because prior to him doing the Joker, he was much more he wasn't that kind of actor. Um,
No.
but one of the articles that I read was Matt Reeves was saying about how the one of the people that he was using as inspiration on what kind of character he wanted to get out of Pattinson for this version of Bruce Wayne was Kurt Cobain.
Oh wow.
So that right there has got me super intrigued. Um,
Yeah.
one of the other ones I am definitely looking forward to. I mean, I'm still on the fence with Black Adam. I mean, it's The Rock.
Y-
We've been talking about this since before Shazam came out. You know,
Yeah. I've made no disguise of how kind of semi tired I am of the whole Dwayne Johnson stick.
hmm
And how he's kind of been campaigning about this movie is like, he's an anti-hero. He's got a dark side, but he's heroic. And my big question is just like, how much of this is going to be your actual comic book character versus you conforming the Dwayne Johnson screen persona to a superhero role or comic book role in general? We'll
right.
definitely see. I did find it interesting because this is him re-teaming up with the director of Jungle Cruise. This is coming out at the exact same point in the summer that Jungle Cruise came out in 2021. Who knows if that'll have any impact? But again, I think it's Dwayne Johnson trying to hype it up as gritty by the Rock standards, which may not be that gritty. We'll see. We'll see.
Right. I am definitely looking forward to Flash. Number one, I've always been a fan of Ezra Miller's version of the Flash. I also read a thing here very recently, Ben Affleck going on record basically saying in terms of all of his performances as Batman as Bruce Wayne, this is his favorite performance to date, including his own movies. So
Yes.
that I'm looking forward to, and obviously with Jason Momoa reteaming with Jason Wan to bring another Aquaman, I'm sold.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the other thing we can't forget with the Flash is that it also has Michael Keaton's Batman back in it,
True.
which is going to be a major incentive for people to come out there. There's also been the word, like, the rumor with the Flash solo movies that it's always going to have been, a version of Flashpoint, which kind of allows, the DC folks to kind of get into their own multiverse type stuff as well. So I'm very curious how it adjusts for that. Um, Aquaman obviously being a kind of a much bigger smash hit than people anticipated, especially coming off of the Zack Snyder Justice League. Um, you know, I'm very curious to see how they will step up that mantle.
Hmm.
Although I am kind of intrigued because DC and Warner are going to release, at least as of this moment in time, um, Warner Brothers is going to release the Flash and Aquaman very close to each other, pretty much as
Right.
close as
As
Marvel
you could.
released Eternals and Spider Man last year. So I'm curious if Aquaman actually sticks in that date because there's some other big competition coming out that Christmas season that might overshadow it. We'll get
True.
into that in a bit, but again, DC is going to be very well represented at the box office this year. And obviously, they're trying a bunch of different things, and we'll see which one of these actually pays off.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and one thing is that when you mentioned Keaton reprising his role as his version of Batman for the Flash, what that did remind me was that a few weeks ago when they also did announce that Keaton is going to be keeping that cape and cowl a little handy as he's going to be
Yep.
reprising his role for the HBO Max Batgirl.
Yep. That's right.
So, so
That's
hey,
promising.
that's very, very promising. Maybe we will definitely get that whole Batman Beyond with old Michael Keaton playing old Bruce Wayne, and I would be
I,
okay with that.
I think that's the end game. So,
I hope so. All right, we're jumping into animation here. As we've talked previously here on the uh, box office episode here, Turning Red, that was supposed to be coming to theaters, just recently got announced that it is going to Disney Plus and is skipping theatrical altogether. This would be the third Pixar movie to go straight to Disney Plus because Luca
that
did Luca do theater?
no, Luca didn't. Soul was the first one.
Yep,
Luca was the second. Turning Red would be the third. And if you really want to extrapolate, the last Pixar movie that did get a theatrical release was Onward, which opened a week before the shutdown.
that's
So
right.
so Pixar has not had very good luck. But there is one movie that Pixar has coming out this year that they are not just going to shove to Disney Plus because they want to make a bunch of make off of it, and that is Lightyear on June 17th. The story of, let's say it again, the real Buzz Lightyear, upon which the Buzz Lightyear toy is based, voiced by Chris Evans, going for that Apollo 13 right stuff, patriotic space travel type of vibe, but in a Pixar cartoon.
Yeah,
I'm just curious how they'll handle Emperor Zurg. That's all I'll say. So
right. And I don't remember what movie I was at that I finally saw the trailer for Lightyear. And when they say, okay, yep, this is what the toys in Toy Story are based off of, to me, it definitely gives me more of a futuristic vibe
yep.
to the point where it's like, so is this like the movies that the toys are based off of kind of thing? Or like, I'm I'm having a hard time grasping what Lightyear exactly is supposed to be. I mean, genuinely does look good, but it's
Yep.
correlation between what it is versus what it's supposed to be representing.
And I think that's going to translate a lot into the box office where people are going to be like, Lightyear, that's a name I recognize, but this
Hmm.
doesn't look at all like the Tim Allen Toy Story character I know and love. And
Right.
that's still going to be enough to get my butt in a seat to watch this movie, which I think is what Disney is ultimately hoping on. So,
Yeah. And then we have Minions: Rise of Gru. So basically, AKA Minions 2.
yep,
Um,
that is right.
when was
Um,
this originally slated for? Because this is one of the ones that got bumped, correct?
Yep. So this movie was supposed to come out in July of 2020. It began advertising during 2020's Super Bowl.
Mm,
So it's been pushed back for 2 full years. So yeah, it's finally going to get out there again, like this, and at least one other movie we're going to talk about in a little bit. Kind of the last remaining leftovers of movies that we've been hearing about since before COVID started.
yeah.
So, and again, the minions. Let's face it, they are a resilient creature. People, no matter what, they still love their minions. They'll still probably show up plentiful for this. You also got Steve Carell's voice coming out of a little boy's body, which will be interesting. So, it'll do just fine. It'll do just
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, this is one of those ones where I'm not too concerned, other than the fact that probably what comes shortly thereafter in July. But I mean, in terms of animated movies that are coming out and whatnot, Minions is going to be fine. People are,
Yeah.
like you said, like you said, they're resilient. The people love the Minions. The first Minions did great here, so I imagine this is going to be no different.
Yep.
Um, what is Strange World? I don't know if I'm familiar with that one actually.
No, this is the next movie from Walt Disney Animation Studios. It's from director Don Hall, the guy who did Big Hero 6 and Ryan the Last Dragon. It's kind of like a sci-fi action adventure. I think it's like a space travel type of movie. We don't know much for it. They've only released like one concept art picture from it.
Okay.
No idea who's in the cast, but it's a Disney animated movie, so I can't write it off. And of course, because it's not Pixar, that means that Disney will actually give it a shot in theaters. So it's opening in that Thanksgiving corridor that they love to put out their movies in the same weekend that Encanto came out last year. So, I can't completely count it out, but I'm just calling it out from a just be aware that this exists, and we'll talk about it when we get a trailer for it, probably in June or July. So,
I'm, you make reference in terms of like the Pixar versus like Encanto and stuff like that. I'm still a little bit on that rocky hesitation train of saying, Disney is in that weird transition period. I think of them determining what is a theatrical movie versus what is going to help boost the numbers on streaming.
mhm.
So I think as we get more and more information about this movie, I think it's real what is really going to tell us, because it might be that kind of thing where maybe they do push it to Disney Plus to help push the eyeballs to the streaming service. So
Possibly, but I think at some point Disney's going to have to make sure that their animated bread and butter is also still at least somewhat in theaters.
mhm.
Because that's what built their brand in the first place. So we'll see. Stranger
Yeah,
things have happened, obviously, even as recently as last week. So
exactly. And then the highly the movie that has turned a few eyes and heads in is Super Mario Brothers by Illumination. So just because we have a bunch of white guys playing a bunch of Italian, all that sort of fun stuff. So, um, I I don't know how this is gonna do. I it feels like it's 35 years too late.
perhaps, but obviously Mario is a brand. Obviously Nintendo has been able to keep the Mario brand going for decades beyond when we were kids. So I
Hmm.
have to give them credit for that. So it's not like you know the young generation these days don't know what Mario is.
This is true.
Uh, um, for our generation, there's also the aspect of, well, we were there when they tried to make a Super Mario Brothers movie the last time, and I know it has its fans, but when I first saw the 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie, my mind was like, this does not look at all like a Super Mario Brothers movie I would have expected. Why did
No.
they screw this up?
Yep.
So obviously this will be very much a kiddified, animated movie compared to what they were trying with the Bob Hoskins one. But I think it's going to fuel some curiosity because Nintendo obviously is going to be very protective this time around. You know, because obviously when that 1993 movie came out, they basically decided right then and there, yeah, we're not going to let anybody make another Nintendo based movie or a Super Mario movie. So I'm be very curious what the exact mix here is that will show like, yes, we are confident in this, and we're obviously going to be the dominant family movie of the Christmas season. And we'll see what Chris Pratt and Charlie Day can do as those iconic roles. Again, I think there's just going to be a lot of curiosity about what this movie is going to be, not unlike what we talked about with Lightyear. And I think that's going to bring the older audiences out, and of course, the family audience is going to come out because it's a shiny colorful cartoon movie coming out during the Christmas season when kids are out of school. So,
yeah. I think everything is going to boil down to that very first trailer for Super Mario Brothers.
yep.
Because after what they've already said in regards to the voice cast for this movie, is I question, are they going to hit the release date? And mainly because I'm picturing feedback like Sonic the Hedgehog. That first trailer came out, the fans did not like how Sonic looked. The studios pushed it back and said and they fixed how Sonic looked. So,
Well,
is that first trailer going to come out and they're going to be like, okay, we're going to have the voice cast come back in and fix in terms of that aspect of it, because if there's one thing Mario is known for, it's the accent.
well, I mean, I don't think it's going to be a Sonic-like disaster. I mean, Sonic, obviously, that was the case where they were trying to merge Sonic into a real-life world, where Super Mario Brothers is going to be all animated, all cartoony from the start. Again, it's the Illumination folks, the guys who gave us, the aforementioned Minions movies and stuff like that. They know how to make movies feel very family-friendly and cartoony. So I'm not expecting that, but of course, obviously, the reaction is going to be to the voice, hearing what Chris Pratt and Charlie Day do. Definitely very much up in the air. And we'll see how that goes. But again, you're absolutely right. The day that first trailer drops, which I'm sure will be no later than when Minions comes out, because they'll want to promote that with that. We'll see what happens. The internet will be talkative that day, that's for sure.
Be like, film Twitter, here I come. Okay, and so now we move on to other things that we've got going on this week, in the 2022. The first thing that we have coming up is Sonic the Hedgehog Part 2, number 2. Is this the official title for this, or?
Yeah, yep. There is no colon or subtitle. It's just Sonic the Hedgehog 2, nice and normal. So,
I don't know. I was hoping for maybe something a little bit more catchy. I mean, we do have Idris Elba. I mean, come on, give us a little bit of something.
Yeah, I mean, Idris Elba is Knuckles. We've heard precisely like one or two lines of dialogue from him thus far. He'll be fine. Again, we still have Jim Carrey doing what Jim Carrey does, which is one of the highlights of that first movie. So I'm glad we have that at the very least. And I know when you were talking about Super Mario Brothers, you had mentioned like that movie's decades too late. Well, technically, Sonic the Hedgehog should also be decades too late, but that did not stop people from showing up for it a couple years ago. So that's where it plays out.
It definitely Sonic the Hedgehog was the movie. It was, when I finally got a chance to see it and whatnot, it was a lot better than I expected it to be. Do I feel it was still 20 years too late? Absolutely. But I think they took the right approach with it. And with the success that the first one had, I was not surprised when they're like, we're going to make a Sonic 2, which, again, like you said, the amount of character that Jim Carrey brought into it, the voice of Sonic was perfectly matched. Ben Schwartz. Yeah, I was gonna go to Schwartzman for a minute there. I was like, that is wrong.
That is a different Sonic the Hedgehog movie right there.
Oh, that would be a way different one. So I am definitely looking forward to this year. I might actually sit down and actually try to go see this one in the theaters this time around. So I guess we'll kind of check that out.
Yeah.
After that, we've got the Fantastic Beasts 3 movie, which at this point right now, I get that they're trying to use the whole brand thing, but like, just dump the Fantastic Beasts. Like, it barely has nothing to do with the Fantastic Beasts anymore.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's just, even the second one was like, okay, yeah, there's some cool animals in it, but that's it. Yeah, that was not the center like the original one was.
Yeah, Fantastic Beasts 2 was all about, here we have Jude Law as young hot Dumbledore, which is going to keep on with this installment. And there was also we revealed that Colin at the end of the first one that Colin Farrell was actually Johnny Depp, and he'll be the main villain going forward. Well, guess what? He's not in this movie because he got fired, and now we have Mads Mikkelsen as Grindelwald. So that should be very. That's probably the one thing I'm actually interested in with this movie, and nothing else is just seeing what Mads Mikkelsen does
I would
as
agree.
the villain. But
I would. I definitely would agree to that, and I like this approach, especially for the fact that if it hadn't been for that character change of Colin Farrell into Johnny Depp, I think it would have been a harder sell. But now that you
yep,
basically have a character that is, I'm going to look like whoever I want to look like and whatnot, you could really have,
they could
depending
do it
on
every
how
movie if they wanted to.
exactly, which is something if this spin-off franchise continues to happen and whatnot, I kind of like that idea. Like, okay, yeah, we've got Colin Farrell now, and we have the brief of the Johnny Depp. Now we have Mads Mikkelsen. We go into that. What happens next, kind of thing. If we do get a Fantastic Four, who's the next one from there? So
That's what they should name that installment, Fantastic Four. That would not have any issues with Marvel whatsoever.
no, not at all, not at all. Um, I and I think Jude Law would be like, just keep bringing me more of that. Between him and Eddie Redmayne, be like, oh, you want to make another one? Just keep bringing me that Harry Potter money.
Yep.
Um, are you really looking forward? I mean, or does this just feel like they're just kind of just keep chugging along for the sake of chugging along?
I mean, I was pretty tired with the franchise with the second Fantastic Beast, especially knowing at that point in time that's like, yeah, we're gonna try and make 5 of these ultimately, and I'm like, oh, these just aren't really engaging me at all. Which
Hmm.
is why the whole Mads Mikkelsen thing is what I like because like he can save pretty much anything.
Yeah.
It'll definitely bring that very unique quality of his that nobody else can match. But again, he's literally the only thing I'm looking forward to in this sequel, which I will still see, but not setting my expectations high.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm still kind of on the where do we go with this here? Moving on to that, we're gonna go into the asterisk movie of the list here. I frankly and personally think is Top Gun Maverick because this movie has been moved 8 times, 10 times, 100 times. I don't know.
Yeah, it was
Uh,
supposed to come out in June of 2020, and
hmm.
I very distinctly remember when we got the first trailer, which was at Comic Con 2019,
Yep.
when Tom Cruise crashed the Paramount panel and said, "Hey, here's my Top Gun trailer," and it was funny because the same day that the Top Gun Maverick trailer came out was also the day that the Cats trailer came out several hours later, and promptly took over the internet. It was a fun day. It was a fun day.
Yeah.
But
Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say I am actually gonna check my phone right now just to make sure that Top Gun Maverick has not been delayed during the course of our discussion here. No, it's still on for May 27th. We're good. We're good.
So yeah, I know Top Gun Maverick feels like, like what you and I said in regards to No Time to Die. We're going to be going to the theater, that weekend, still checking our phone to see whether or not Paramount has pushed that movie back yet again.
Yep.
Granted, I'm especially with all these variants and all the stuff that's been going on with COVID and whatnot, I don't feel safe that we're going to stick to a 5/27 release date for Top Gun. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I've explained my theory in other spots, which is that my big theory with why Top Gun keeps getting delayed is because Tom Cruise, ever the showman and publicity hound for his movies, likes to go
Hmm.
around the world and do press junkets and appearances and talk shows and everything that he can do in person to stoke the fan base for his movie.
Yep.
And if he can't do that, at least to his standards, then obviously you won't do it. Now, granted, this is the same Tom Cruise who basically risked his life to finish Mission Impossible 7, given all the COVID stuff going on, and we have the tapes to prove it.
Hmm.
My speculation is that I'm betting we're gonna see by the time the Super Bowl happens, we're gonna know if Top Gun is actually a go or not, because that's the kind of movie where I think they'd make a big hullabaloo putting out like a new commercial, maybe even a new trailer during the Super Bowl to plug that, because that's your target audience for that movie right there. But they're going to have to make that call very, very soon. So hopefully by the time this episode drops, they haven't made that change, so we still seem a little bit accurate. But, to Brian's points, there is an asterisk. Keep your fingers crossed. We'll see if Tom Cruise actually comes through this time.
Mm-hmm. And then, and the part I find very interesting, as long as our dates still continue to stay solid here, is just a couple weeks later after that we have Jurassic World Dominion, where I think if in the instance Top Gun doesn't stick and Dominion does, this would actually work to Dominion's advantage, just because what.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously the first two Jurassic World movies have been very dominant at the box office,
Mm-hmm.
to the extent where even if Top Gun stayed, I still think Top Gun will be a decent hit, but Jurassic World will still blow it way out of the water because one, people love dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
1A, people love dinosaurs eating people. And two, this is the big legacy sequel aspect where this time we not only do we have
True.
Jeff Goldblum back, but also Sam Neill and Laura Dern, which is going to be a big, huge deal for a certain sector of this audience. So,
Yeah, that is very, very true. I guess, yeah, I think you were correct. I mean, because Top Gun Maverick is one of those ones where, again, into the same instance of like Sonic the Hedgehog, a movie that is many, 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 many years too late.
yep.
Is not to say as a Top Gun fan that I won't go see it anyway. Um, but I think you're right. I think with the combination of the success of what Jurassic World has been, what Chris Pratt has brought to revitalizing that franchise, but bringing in the originals from the very first Jurassic Park,
Mm-hmm.
I think all that accumulation, I think definitely is one of those kind of things that I think you're right. If Top Gun sticks, I think Paramount is going to be on the struggle bus once the dinosaurs hit the big screen, and it's not going to be able to stick that long.
Yeah. But,
Um, and then going shortly thereafter that, we have Jordan Peele's Nope, which I will tell you is I know little to nothing about this movie. I don't even remember if they've even cast anybody. All I know is I have a movie called Nope, and it's Jordan Peele, and it will have I will be sitting in the theater to go see this just because I like the fact that it's we know what Jordan Peele is capable of, and this is just I mean it's Nope.
yeah. I mean, this is one of the very few non-sequel, non-reboot, non-remake movies I've put in this list for this week's
Hmm.
episode, and that's simply because when Get Out came out, which is 5 years ago, nearly 5 years ago at this point, it was a huge success. It made like $175 million. And then Jordan Peele follows it up a couple years later with Us, and that also makes $175 million at the box office. So Jordan Peele is one of those filmmakers, not unlike Christopher Nolan, who the very mention of his name saying, I've got a new movie coming out,
Hmm.
catches people's ears right away. Now, they have filmed this movie. They did cast it because this has Daniel Kaluuya in it, and
That's
Kiki
right.
Palmer, and Stephen Yeun.
That's
Um,
right.
but again, that's basically all we know, which again stokes that fire and that mystery, so that when Universal decides to pull the trigger, which maybe they'll do that with the Super Bowl, who knows?
Hmm.
But um, people will get excited right away as soon as they realize that yes, a new Jordan Peele movie is imminent. So
I love the fact that in these 5 years, basically since Get Out, that there's that shift of Jordan Peele's name of,
yep,
you would think it was Key and Peele, you think comedy, you think funny, you think that now 5 years later it's Jordan Peele. I'm like, ooh, what sadistic, depressing horror masterpiece am I going to get out of this man? So
yeah,
you're absolutely correct. He's definitely in a short period of time taken his name and said, watch this, and people will go to a movie like I said, like you could have even taken the title off of it. I would be like, Jordan Peele, I will be there. So
yep.
I'm great. I can't wait to see what the next 5 years for him does. All right, and then we have our fall winter movies here. And speaking of previously here of Mr. Tom Cruise, if it sticks, Paramount will also be releasing Mission Impossible 7 in September, which I think what is fascinating because you bring up the point about Tom Cruise globetrotting, doing all the press check-ins, all that stuff and whatnot. He will barely be off of Top Gun before he gets on that flight to go start promoting for a Mission Impossible.
Yep.
I could almost picture him at some point here, depending on the release schedule and him trying to do all of that press and whatnot, basically doing press for both these movies simultaneously.
That'll basically be what it feels like. I mean, I'm very curious because again, Tom Cruise has a lot of activity, but I know they're also still trying to make not only Mission Impossible 8, which I
Hmm.
don't know if they've even started filming that. I don't think they have, but I know they still want to make that. Tom Cruise also still has to make the movie where he goes to space. Um, so I'm going to be very curious, how Tom Cruise fits these things in their very demanding production requirements amidst trying to promote two giant blockbusters squarely on his shoulders
Yeah.
in this year alone. It's absolutely demanding, but Tom Cruise is supernatural, so he could do it.
I was gonna say if any human individual in Hollywood could do it, it's Tom Cruise.
Yes, and
Uh,
you're absolutely right. I mean, if Top Gun gets pushed out, yes, Mission Impossible 7 gets pushed out probably into 2023.
hmm
So it's a big domino effect here with how the Tom Cruise stuff works right now. So
Yeah,
again, another asterisk.
yeah, because these are those two tent poles that Paramount does have a streaming service to lean on, like other movies that they've done previously, as well as everything like that. But you and I both know that there's no way, shape, form, whatever that this is going to be. The only time this is going to end up on Paramount Plus is after it's made its theatrical run.
Yeah, I think this was one of the movies they announced that very early on in the Paramount Plus strategy where this would actually end up on the service like 45 days after it opens in theaters, if I
Hmm.
recall correctly. So it will have that component. But again, Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie are going to make sure, just like with Top Gun Maverick,
Yep,
that this is seen on a big screen first. So
absolutely. And then we start getting into spooky season, and we have our follow up to the new trilogy of Halloween movies with Halloween Ends on October 14th. Um, and if memory serves me correctly, this is completely in the can. It just needs to be released because they filmed this simultaneously with Halloween Kills,
he,
correct?
well, what I found out during the press junket for Halloween Kills is that they had not actually filmed Halloween Ends prior to COVID. So they are filming that early this year to hit that October 14th release date. So it is not actually in the can yet, despite what I had originally thought.
Oh,
So,
okay. So
so
there is that potential of just the sake of who knows what could happen in the next few months
yeah,
of us possibly not hitting a 10/14 release date for this one here. It may be getting probably pushed back to Halloween of 2023. I mean, the advantage that we have to this here is there's probably not a whole lot of post.
yeah.
Low budget, very practical type of film and whatnot. So that's going to work to our advantage and possible disadvantage, just depending on protocols and stuff going on in terms of how the scale of what this last one is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually pretty optimistic that this movie will hit its date because again, David Gordon Green, he's a very efficient indie filmmaker.
True.
He also can't push it out because in Halloween of 2023 is when he begins his next reboot trilogy, which is the Exorcist movies.
True.
So he's got to get that spun up and going as well. So that's another reason why I think that they'll be able to work it through and get Halloween Ends. And again, it's they can knock out a sequel to Halloween Kills in 9 months. I'm not
Yeah.
worried about that as long as production gets started here fairly soon. So
Right. And it's not like that whoever's playing the shape can't wear a mask underneath his mask.
exactly, Michael Myers knew what was going on from the get go. So
Right? He's like, I've been wearing a mask since '77, dudes.
this is why I don't die.
And then we get into the Thanksgiving weekend of 2022 with Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut of Creed 3. Um,
Yes.
one of these days, I'm going to get around to watching Creed 1 and 2.
Oh,
Eh,
you really should. They're. I mean, and this is not just the Rocky nostalgia talking. They are actually genuinely good movies. And
Yeah.
Michael B. Jordan, is great in them. Ryan Coogler obviously set the template with the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
Creed 2 is a fun sequel to both Creed 1 and Rocky 4 at the same time, as weird as
Yep.
that sounds. And then Creed 3, again, I don't really know who Creed is fighting in this movie. All I know is that Michael B. Jordan's going to step into the director's chair, which is very exciting. I'm glad his career has gotten to this point where he can take that risk. And hopefully it works out well.
Not only him take that risk, but the studio where we've had a very successful franchise reboot essentially, or spin off to the Rocky franchise, to have the studio have that much confidence in him to take on the third one, since Coogler's not coming back to direct.
Well, Coogler wasn't even part of Creed 2 because he was busy making Black Panther.
That's right.
Yes.
So,
but it's also not unheard of because, again, a number of the Rocky sequels back in the day were directed by Stallone himself. So
that's true.
It can be done. It can be done.
And that's the kind of thing where, too, it's like, okay, at least if you're going to have somebody behind the, an actor turned director who's going to take on a franchise, who better than the one who the franchise is built around? I mean, yeah, you're playing some serious double duty in this respect. Yeah. But who better to direct the character than the one playing the character? So,
yeah, and I would also say, I mean, the Rocky and Creed movies, they have a very specific structure. So you know what you're going to do. You're going to do your training montages. You're going to do your boxing sequences. It's very much locked in terms of what these movies consist of. So if you can hit those essentials, you're golden. So,
yeah. Oh no, I agree. So I'm probably going to get caught up, and maybe I'll watch those other Rocky movies too here, to kind of give myself some context here. And then we move into the Christmas season, where we get the long-awaited, 10 years, 12 years? How long has it been since we...
It will have been 13 years since the original, when this comes out.
And I guess we'll certainly see how well that pays off for... Oh, yeah, because it's going to be Disney now. It's going to be a Disney... It's 20th Century Studios. At first, I was like, what studio is going to be the one that's going to be stuck with us? That's right, because it was originally a Fox property. Yep. So I'm curious to see, do we end up with, because I guess the first thing I think of is, do we end up with a monster hit like we had with the original Avatar, or do we have a very ambitious movie that falls flat, which, as somebody as myself who really loved Alita Battle Angel, it did not hit like how it, I hoped it would in the United States. But is this movie even 10 years too late, 5 years too late, to the point where they've invested so much money in this movie and it's not gonna make its money back?
Yeah, here's what I'll say with that. I mean, one is the common refrain is, with a movie like this, never bet against James Cameron.
True.
He keeps making these Gonzo type movies and always manages to come out with a ginormous hit. So we can't dispute that.
Yeah.
I know, as I mentioned elsewhere, this time around, James Cameron, has Disney at his backing. The massive Disney marketing machine is going to do anything and everything they can to make this, to get this back into people's heads, saying, hey, remember Avatar? Remember how you like this movie? Well, here's the sequel. And this time they're pretty much all underwater. So that's going to be incredibly exciting. Mm-hmm. To your point of competition, again, to recap what we showed here earlier in the show, so its competition this Christmas season is going to be Aquaman 2, which is also going to be very wet, and we have the Super Mario Brothers movie. So, there is that potential that if Aquaman or Mario really captured the audiences, Avatar is in trouble. And I'm also curious, like, with IMAX screens or large format screens like the XD screen, who's going to win that battle between Avatar and Aquaman? I'd almost want to think James Cameron will strong arm Disney into giving him those screens for Avatar 2 to make it as big an event as possible. I'm also curious because when the first Avatar came out in 2009, that was kind of the killer app for 3D movies.
Yep.
Just as that resurgence was happening right before every studio decided, well, we're just going to take whatever movies we currently have and just sloppily convert them into 3D. Mm-hmm. But this is one of the big 3D movies that actually worked. And so I'm curious how that's going to play out with the sequel, as it plays to an audience that's become very tired of 3D movies, to the point where if a movie comes out in 3D, it's like only one showing in the first weekend only, and that's it.
Right. At this point right now, are they going to care that it's in 3D?
Yeah. Um, and then of course, just I think there's also still the kind of the curiosity of, what is Cameron going to do, to actually top himself, with this new installment. Because obviously the big gimmick of this next movie is there's like an underwater tribe, and so James Cameron's already talked about, yeah, we've done all this underwater motion capture stuff, and in order to make it work, my actors have to hold their breath for 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes at a time. It's really great, which is absolutely insane. And I know he's bringing in new people like Kate Winslet back from Titanic.
Hmm.
Vin Diesel, I believe, is in these, if I'm
I
not
was going to say,
mistaken.
I was looking up, if I remember correctly, Vin was supposed to be in this here.
So very curious how that works out. And I'm sure several others that I'm forgetting too, but it's going to be very interesting to see what James Cameron does, if he is actually able to up the ante, and especially given, we're still in that box office recovery mode. It's going to be very interesting, because to see James Cameron come back to a box office situation that is vastly different, just in the past several years.
Yeah.
And so it's really going to be a challenge to see if he can actually get those people back. Because again, they've only filmed Avatar 2 and Avatar 3 at this point. And if the success of Avatar 2 is going to dictate whether he gets to make Avatar 4 and 5, which have already been written,
Yep.
but have not actually been filmed. So there is, he does have some skin in the game if he wants to keep his Avatar saga going. He has to make this a hit.
Yeah.
So again, probably more so than any other box office story we've just covered in this show for the upcoming year, this is the big question mark, to see whether this actually works or not.
Yeah. I do think that Disney's going to do anything and everything they can to at least make this one a success, so that they can keep the I mean, because clearly, if there's one thing Disney knows, is that there are certain IPs they work as long as they know how to market them, and they
Yep.
will make money hand over fist. I mean, the Marvel Studios movies is a prime example of that. Maybe that Disney will to use the Avatar sequels as a means of rebranding and launching, fully embracing and launching the 20th Century Studios.
Sure.
So I mean, I guess we'll see. And like you said, I mean, James Cameron's not known for making bad movies that don't make no money.
Yep.
So I mean, clearly, Disney's going to do everything they can to make this successful. James Cameron's going to do everything to make this successful. So I,
Yep.
I do have high hopes for it. And frankly, if you can have movies come out 20, 30 years later that are successful, like Sonic the Hedgehog, for example, um, anything is possible. And I have high hopes for Avatar. I do. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll see. With that being, that is basically the end of for what we've currently got coming out for the sake of the box office for 2022. Clearly, new things are going to arise, new movies are going to come out, and we're going to find out about things along the way.
Yep.
But that's kind of the high level of what we've got coming on. Anything we missed or anything like that, be sure to. Oh, what you got?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, you're kind of getting into my plug here. I mean, I
Oh,
will
go
be
for it.
covering every release as they come out and coming soon every week. And then,
Mhm.
if they're theatrical, we'll be talking about them on the show, seeing how they do. So these aren't the last you're hearing of these movies, believe you me.
That being said, everybody have a great night, and we will check you out here.